Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tony Pellegrino. Today I'm being joined by Val Douglas.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. We have got a great show for you today. This is part of Facebook Live Tech Talk that I do every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Today's topics, we're going to get right to this, were requested by one of our viewers, Jason Adams out of Ohio. He wanted to know all about shocks, specifically coilover shocks. How do you tune them? How do you diagnose if they need tuning? How do you talk about, explain to the guy that is tuning for you? How do you choose coil spring rates, specifically dual rates? How do you adjust the secondary nuts? Why do you need the nitrogen? How do you change the valving or dampening in the shock? And more, right? So we've got a whole bunch to talk about this. I am going to do my best to put this into layman's terms. Obviously, shocks can be very complicated because they can be used on a wide variety of vehicles. Today, we're going to talk about them specifically for long arm Jeep.
Yes.
So long arm suspension Jeeps. All right. If you missed last Tech Talk on Tuesday, you missed a good one. We had Ernie from Torco Synthetics on. You can still watch it here on Facebook or over on our YouTube. As always, we welcome your questions and comments. Please tell us what year you have, model, make. All of that information will help us answer your question. Let's see. We've got a couple of featured products today. So let's start with AGM sliders. So this is an upgraded slider that's actually made of 3 pieces. Yep. So there's a bottom, there's an inner piece, and this upper piece. And this allows the coil to slide. So when a coil spring compresses, it wants to turn, and this slider allows it to do that. On top of that, it's longer, and it's more precision to slide on the body of the shock. So it takes away the squeak. There's a bunch of good things with it. Those run $120 each. Fuel pump access panel. We've shown this a couple of times before. This is something that you cut into the floor on your TJ, YJ, CJ, LJ, and then it gives you access without having to drop the tank. These start at $149.
So helpful, guys.
Yeah.
You have no idea. You don't want to have to drop the entire tank. That's so much
and typically
easier.
it goes out when it's full.
Yes.
Right now you're dealing with a super heavy tank. Next, Val's going to lift
louver.
up our hood louvers.
We've got both versions.
Yep, we sell this in brushed aluminum or black powder coated. These start at $129. You can find these on our website, and I'll show you where to do that in just a second. Super easy to install. You cut a few holes, and you can get a lot of heat out of there.
Yes, big.
We got summer coming.
Yes, you guys that overheat, this is what you need.
That's what you need. The next thing, I don't have any sitting here, but I wanted to tell everybody that not to forget that we have a 3-link and a 4-link bracket kit. Both start at $99. That is a really good price if you've got a welder, which you need to anyways because you got to weld them on to the frame. $99, you can't even buy the raw material and plasma cut that stuff out yourself with any kind of accuracy. These are all done, formed, ready to be welded together, really cool, come with instructions on what order to put them together in. So 99 bucks, hard to beat, for sure. Of course, if you don't see what you're looking for on our website, what do? You call. Phone number is big and bold right there, okay? And if you're interested in something like those AGM sliders or anything else we're talking about today, you just go to the search box, you type in part of the description, and it will populate everything, all of your choices that are there. Something brand new that I want to talk about is if you are a Tech Talk fan, we have a brand new Tech Talk page on the website. To get there, you go over to the company tab. This drops down. It's the very first one, Tech Talk with Tony. Easy enough, right? By the way, that's how all of these work. The gallery, they all scroll down and make it easy for you to get to where you're going. The reason I'm talking about the Tech Talk page is we've got a brand new form on here. And by the way, these are quick links over to Facebook or YouTube so you can see some of the previous shows. If you fill out your email and some other information about you, we will send you a brand new, specially done Tech Talk with Tony t-shirt that has a special little slogan on it that I'm not going to tell you until you get yours.
Yep.
It's going to come with some stickers, one of those cool neck gaiters, and one of our laminated rollover cards. So bunch of free stuff. Obviously, we want to know a little bit about you, but it's only going to help us refine the show and what we talk about on the show. So.
And just so you guys know, we're not going to sell your information, but we do need it so we can send you the stuff.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know if you were watching last Christmas, but when I had certain size things or certain things for vehicles, we will already know about you and we'll be able to just give you the stuff without even talking about it.
Yep.
So makes it nice.
Our new viewers, let's update them on that. So at Christmas time, we gave away about $9,000 in product on Tech Talk. Yeah. So it's good to watch this show.
Yeah. And we just chose people that watched the show.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool. All right, next slide. So we're going to talk about coils, springs, everything. And to start this off, we're going to watch a video. And this video is really key for you to understand some of the basic concepts in why you may be feeling what you're feeling or hear or whatever you've heard about shocks. Okay, so we're going to start this off. And if you notice, this vehicle is not going very fast and it is just blowing through the travel, okay? The first concept you need to understand is that a coilover shock like this, the valve stack, the dampening built inside of it is speed sensitive, okay? So the faster you go, the better it will work. So what's gonna happen is, I'm driving this vehicle, we're gonna turn around and we're gonna start going fast, and you will be amazed. Like right now, you see it touching the bump stop, and when I turn around and start going fast, you're not even gonna, you'll be amazed how well this works, okay? So when you tune a shock, you have to tune it for the type of driving you're doing, okay? So that's important. Here we go, we're gonna step it up and get going faster, and you notice all of a sudden there's a space there, and now the shock is working much better, even with very little shock shaft showing. We're hitting the exact same stuff. All I did was turn around and go the other direction, and you can see how much better it works, okay? All of this is super important for everything we're gonna talk about today. All right, any questions so far, Val?
Just one when we get to the shocks a little bit later, so it can wait.
Okay. All right, so I think that's pretty good for everybody. I'm gonna pause that and then we will come back over on this side. All right, let's see, we talked about, I think, part of what makes this so complicated that kind of stymies people, at least that we've talked to about shocks, is, it seems like there's so much going on with a coilover shock. So part of what I want to explain it very simply and talk about what some of the advantages are of going this route, okay? So first off, when you convert over to a coilover shock, can you see that okay, Alex? When you convert over, what you're getting is a very high quality shock. This is much higher quality than any regular shock you're gonna buy. The construction of it, the bearings, the seals, the chrome on the shaft, the finishes, everything about it, all the valving, the shim stack, everything is high quality. Next thing is there's no rubber on this, right? These are Heim ends built into this. So what happens is that means that every little movement in the suspension, normally the rubber is taking up some of that before the shock even starts to work. So the shock is working right away. So you don't get any acceleration and gets out of control. The next thing is a coilover like this is a true dual rate, okay? So you've got an upper spring rate and a lower spring rate, and this will help the ride. Okay, a lot of times people will talk about this upper spring being the ride spring and the lower being the load spring. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And this blue piece in the middle is the same as this, what we call a slider. So this slides up and down with the two springs, and it separates the two springs. So an important piece of it. There is a little black thing in here. This is bump stop. It's a very small one, and it's only meant for articulation. This is not meant for a bump stop like this, that like we showed you on the video. Okay. Now, all of that said, let me go back to my beginning page here, because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. You got questions?
No, the thing that we need to point out, and Tony said it, but I want to make sure you guys understand, because we have had somebody message us about a shock like this and had the same rate spring on both sides of that slider, and that's not what a true dual rate spring suspension is meant to be. You're supposed to have a different one on the bottom and a different one on the top.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the time, it would be a 150 over 200, something like that. What you want to be careful of is you never want these two spring rates to vary more than 100 pounds. So the most you'd want to go is 150 over 250. So if that's still not enough spring, then you have to up both springs, right? Then you got to go 200 over 300, right? So you just got to make sure they're no more than 100 pounds rate apart, okay? And we're going to talk about that spring rate here in a second as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to point out is that the spring and dampening control are on one plane, right? So this is the easiest, like everything's in line, right? Doesn't everything always work better when it's all working together? Of course it does. So when you do it this way, it's a very tight package. It makes mounting things on the axle, just like the video we saw, it's very clean. You don't have a lot of extra stuff hanging around, and this is also serviceable, right? Yes. So that's we're going to get to serviceability in a minute here as well. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is these two things right here. Some people call these secondary nuts. Some call them crossover nuts. I don't care what you call them, but they're important. And when this has the weight of the vehicle on them, this slider will be about a finger's width away from these secondary nuts. And that's an important part, because that's the part where when that slider touches those, it's turned into the true dual rate, okay? So you go from these two springs combined to just the lower spring rate, and we're going to talk about spring rates in just a second and try and take away the mystery behind all that, because I know I've had lots of questions over the years about that. The next thing is that everybody needs to understand is that these shocks, so this is a non-reservoir, you can see right here, has a Schrader valve on it, and we also sell the same one with a reservoir, okay? Now this doesn't matter whether it's King or Fox or whatever, everything we're talking about applies to both, okay? So a non-reservoir at full extension like this would take a 75-pound charge of nitrogen pressure, okay?
Write that down. 75
we get that question all the time.
Pounds.
What the nitrogen does is it pressurizes the oil and keeps it from foaming, okay? So the oil inside your shock is very similar to brake fluid in your brakes. If air gets in there, it's spongy and crummy and doesn't work like it's supposed to. So it's important that this is pressurized, and that keeps the air bubbles and the whole thing from foaming.
Yep.
If you have this style with the remote reservoir, then these take 150 PSI. And we brought over this cutout one because we wanted to show you that inside here is a floating piston. So the nitrogen stays on this side and the oil stays on this side. Now what the reservoir does is, as the shaft goes in the shock, there's a certain amount of oil that gets pushed, and this cavity right here is exactly the same volume as the shaft, okay? So all it's doing is letting the volume of oil in the shaft travel in and out of here while still maintaining pressure on the oil, okay? Now, what's important to understand is that nitrogen pressure also acts like spring rate. Okay, so it will add about 1 inch of height to the vehicle when it's properly charged. So what'll happen is people set their vehicle down, they try and make all these adjustments, they're on the phone with us big time, and then we learn that there's no nitrogen in the shocks.
Yeah.
Okay, not cool. You gotta fix that. And we sell a little gauge like this that makes it easy. You just thread this thing down on your shock, and then you can check the pressure here. By the way, you do one quick little blip and it'll drop like 50, 60 pounds. So that's why it's separated like this, so you can bleed it off really easily. These are a simple little tool, and several people make them. This is just the one we sell. Makes it really nice. I've also, my personal one is the power tank one,
Yes.
which is, I absolutely love. So you can look that up too, and that's readily available as well. So just like anything, you want to make sure you have the right tools. Next is the valving or dampening within the shock, okay? So you've heard everybody talk about compression, rebound. The whole idea here, just make it simple, is you just want to keep the wheel on the ground, right? Following the ground. Now, just like the video I showed you a minute ago, that depends on how fast you're going, like what's going on. There's a lot of factors, right? So typically, you want to set this up for, that's why when we go out at King of the Hammers, we're dialing the car in for race speed, right? We want to make sure that at a fast speed, if we hit a rut or a bump or a rock or a bush or whatever, that the car's not going to do something funny and throw us and make us crash. So now you don't have to get that crazy with the trail rig, but what you do want to do is you want to make sure that when you drop off something, that it doesn't just slam the bottom out. You want it to dampen, okay? Now, that's where this comes in. So an air bump like this, these can range from about 100 pounds of nitrogen pressure to, we call them air bumps, but it's really a hydraulic bump stop, okay? It's slang. To 300 PSI of nitrogen, okay? When this kicks in, this is a 700 pound spring rate, okay? This really slows you down, okay? This is a super important component to make sure you don't hear that clack of the frame. When you hear that clack, that slam, I got to tell you, that resonates through the bearings in your axle, through everything on your Jeep, and I'm going to tell you, you probably got about 10 or 20 of those, and something's going to break.
Yep,
okay?
And it's going to hurt your back.
Yeah. So, I mean, and when I say something, I mean, it could be your radiator breaks out of its mounts. It could be your knuckle breaks off. It could be you break a weld somewhere. Guys, you just can't let things bottom out over and over and over again. It's unacceptable, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So you have to. I don't care what coilover you have to have an external bump stop. I don't even care if it's that EVS foam stuff. You cannot just let the coilover slam, okay? Super important. And we've also talked about limit straps because you don't want the whole thing pulling on the shock either. That's just gonna damage the internals, so I don't wanna get too far off topic here.
No, but you mentioned limit straps, so make sure you have a limit strap when you got a coilover, because your shock shouldn't be your limit strap.
Yes, for sure. And typically we put them on about a ½ inch short because the strap stretches a little bit.
Yep.
Keep in mind you got a 1,000-pound axle out there just yanking on those things, so there's quite a bit of force. So all that covered, now let's kind of get to the meat of it. When it comes to choosing coil springs, there's a very specific formula, and this formula is you take the two spring rates, so you can do 100 over 100 or 100 over 150 or whatever the rate is. Then you divide that by the two combined that are added together, and that equals the spring rate that you have. So we made it easy for you. 100 over 100 is a 50-pound spring rate, okay? So it combines, believe it or not, it combines the two springs, and you actually have less spring rate. Now, I know what you're thinking, because this is what the conversation Jamie and I had, is how could this super, even if you said 150 over 150, how does a 75-pound spring rate hold up my 4,000-pound Jeep? Well, very good question. Because guess what? only 2,000 pounds of that is sprung.
Yep.
Right? 2,000 pounds of that is unsprung weight. Your axles, tires, and wheels weigh about half of what the entire vehicle weighs. Okay, especially on a good rock crawler that's got upgraded stuff. So my point with this entire chart is that I want to show you that if you have a 100 over 100 and all you do is go to a 150 over 100, you've only moved up 10 pounds. So people think, oh, I moved up 50. No, you haven't. Okay, so even a 100 over 200, that's the most I told you could do, right? That's 100 pounds between the two springs is only 66 pounds. So this gives you a really good idea, and I just want you to understand the increments. Now, all that said, remember we talked just a second ago about how this is your ride spring because it's dividing the two. So in this case, this is a 150 over 200. So we're sitting right here, right? Yeah,
Yep.
at 85 pounds. Okay, so until this blue slider hits these nuts, this is 85 pounds. This is a nice, light, it's gonna eat up the little choppy stuff on the street, on the a fire road, whatever you got, it's gonna feel great. When this hits, it goes right to 200 pounds.
Yep.
Okay, so that's how this whole thing works. Now, you've got to use these. You can't just roll these up and go, oh, I want a lot more travel. It doesn't work like that. If this spring does what they call coil bind, so if all these coils smoosh up together, it's going to shatter this slider. Okay, so you've got to have these secondary nuts hit the top of this slider. Okay, or you'll have trouble. Once this shatters, the two springs start rubbing on the body. It's not pretty, and you're going to get a lot of wear. In fact, it'll probably wear the threads right off the body. So you don't want to do that. These threads kind of act like a saw, and they start sawing through the spring. Okay, what have we got for questions? I know, but I've been talking for a while.
Lots.
We've got to have a lot.
All right. So Dave Rupert asked on his spring rate what it takes to compress a spring 1 inch. I guess that depends on the spring.
So exactly this.
But this.
So I'm glad we're getting here. This is perfect, right? So if you take this spring and you stand it up, and this one is a 100, okay? So I have to apply 100 pounds to make this move 1 inch. To move the second inch is another 100 pounds. The third inch, another 100. So to compress this 3 inches is 300 pounds, okay? Simple, right? So same here. So 100 over 100 is 50 pounds for the first inch, okay? So on and so forth. Now, where this makes a difference, and I love where this is going because this is like some of the stuff that I just jones on, is now we get to talk about preload. Yes. So when you start threading this down, this is what's called preload. Okay, now you're not allowed more than 3 inches of preload. By the way, hold up that little thing. Okay, when you buy shocks from GenRight, you get this whole setup thing. Everything I'm telling you today is in these instructions that come with the shocks. And this is very specific to your vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, so we're covering a lot of this that's in that. You roll this preload down, and this is part of what makes the wheels push down for traction. Okay, so race vehicles use a lot of preload. They're really looking to like keep those wheels down, and they're looking for traction, and that's a secret technique. Years ago, people would put on only the springs they needed just to keep the Jeep like at ride height, but it doesn't really help suspend the vehicle. It doesn't give it that preload.
No, I had a guy do that to the Valtastrophe, and well,
it's unstable.
Yeah, it's unstable, and she's
because that
like
first 50 pounds just
now.
disappears, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got this a couple inches down, you've already set it at a couple 100 pounds, and then that's when it starts to take. Okay, so remember, at ride height, every 50 pounds of spring rate is 1 inch, right? So you can look at that, like if you have 3 inches of preload, if you put 150 pound heavier spring, you will have 0 preload. It's that simple, okay? So we're getting into a bunch of good stuff. And I can tell you, on my old growler, it was 150 over 150, so that had a 75 pound spring rate. In the front was 200 over 200, so 100 pound spring rate. The motor's heavier, right? Yeah. You get the second rate when the second spring kicks in. The Terramoto's a little heavier than that, so I'm in the 2 over 250. So, you know, that's a, like, it's just a little more though.
Not by
111
much.
pounds,
Yeah.
right? So it's not much more.
Yep.
So that's really what we're hoping to get across. So
Yep.
what other questions
All
have we
right,
got?
so 250 over 250.
Yep.
If we've got somebody set up that way, or like an elite suspension that's
Yes.
got 250 over 250, explain how that works. Because we do have some people, okay, so case in point, guys, we had a guy that messaged us from Iceland, and he's building an Icelandic vehicle, and it's a Hilux, Toyota Hilux, and he's building it to go play on the glaciers. And he's got some coilovers that are 300 over 300. Those are too heavy of a spring rate for that vehicle because that vehicle doesn't weigh enough. So you got to be careful with your spring rates as well.
Yes.
And let's talk about the weight of the vehicle.
So part of what you're after is you've got to have enough spring to hold your vehicle up where you want it. So typically, if it's a rock crawler, you're going to want, you know, 3 inches of shaft showing, right? So the body will sink down, and that means the springs are compressing, and you've got some load, right? Preload on it. If you want to go a little faster, you can up it by 1 inch, and just like we showed you on the video, where you might have 4 inches of shock shaft showing. So you don't have to get too crazy. All of our suspensions have anti-squat built in, which means the more you press on the gas, the more it's helping you push down. So it's like adding spring rate, okay? That's part of what I figured out a long time ago works really well. Okay, so all that said, now you say, well, you know, I got the wrong springs because I bought the shocks from some bozo that sells them to trucks and stuff, and they sent me with 300 over 300. We would never do that. Like, you have to special request a 300 from us, okay? So what it's going to do is it's going to be really harsh.
Yes.
Okay, so now you got to start stepping down, and you got to get on the phone with somebody like us to help you understand this, right? And then this is where we're going to get you back to where you need to be on spring rate.
Yes, definitely. Now, Dave asked the question, what's the difference between a shock setup with dual rates like this versus, say, the AEV dual rate spring that they sell with their 3.5-inch kit? Totally different.
Totally different, yeah, because you can't pick where that kicks in.
No.
Okay, so that's a completely different animal. Now, it's good, it's better than this, right? So if you just have a straight rate spring, you know, a regular coil spring like that would come from the factory.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be the whatever. They're probably something over in this range, you know, and so each inch, you know, that's what it takes. So the other ones are progressive. So, you know, maybe the first inch is like 50 pounds, and then it starts to stack up where it's even more. So it stacks faster than 50, 50, 50, right? It might go to 50 to 100 to 200. So it's just helping. And ideally what they do with those is they're designed around weight.
Yes.
Okay. So those ones are set up so that the more stuff you pack in your vehicle, they're just helping to carry the load like a leaf spring would.
Right.
Right. So you can fake this out and do the same thing here, or you can add preload.
Yep.
Okay. So you do, that's part of the adjustability that people love about coilovers, right? Is you've got, so you can change the springs, you can add preload, you can do all this stuff. Now, a lot of that can be done still keeping the same valving. So because if you don't change your driving speed much, then the valving's probably going to be fine for quite a while.
Yeah.
So, all right, more questions.
Yes, Evan asks, Evan Osborne wants to know, he swapped out 2 coilovers and now he's got a lot of body roll on his TJ and he's got an anti-rock on it. So what can he do to adjust his coilovers?
That's these, the secondary nuts.
Secondary nuts.
Roll these down till there's 1 finger space at ride height between these and the top of that spacer. Okay, trust me, go try that right now. Take it for a spin and come right back and tell us. You're going to be amazed how well, it's like you added a second sway bar.
Yep, exactly. Let's look. We had a good question. Kelly Sims or Shane.
I think that's who's Jeeper watching here,
okay.
yeah.
So we've got people with hard tops on for the winter, and they'll be taking those off for the summer.
Yeah.
What can they do to adjust their coilovers according to the weight change?
Yeah, so that's a preload thing, okay? So what you would want to do, and I don't know if I have any of my sheets over there, I have a sheet, and I can share that with our viewers.
Yes.
That I fill out every time I make a change on the Terremoto. So if I'm going to go rock crawling, I have a sheet that tells me move the preload to this, move the secondary nut to here, have these 2 springs on, and charge the nitrogen to this.
Yes.
And that's my setup. I don't even have to think about it. It's done. If I'm going to go run KOH, right, then I add more preload. I move this, more nitrogen. By the way, you can fake out, it's only a temporary solution, but you can fake out the amount of dampening or valving you have inside the shock by 10% by adding 50 pounds more nitrogen.
Yes.
So if you would have normally added 150, you could go to 200. So if you're trying to kind of figure out if you need more valving, you can go up to 200, go drive it, see what you think, and if it gets harsh or it's, you go, oh no, that was the wrong direction, then okay, then I don't need more valving. What I need is probably more rebound.
Yeah.
So those are all different things.
Things that are internal. Speaking of the internals, that's a good shock, but let's touch base on what an actual valving pack looks like.
Yes, so they are precision shims.
They're washers.
Yeah, they look like washers, but they're very thin. That's why they call them shims.
Yep.
And they're made out of a spring steel. Good ones would be heat treated so that regardless of whether the shock's cold or hot, they would perform the same.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're going to get out of a good quality shock. Okay, so that stack is on top of a little piston. We should have had one of those out.
Yeah.
That has holes in it. And as the washers flex, they let more oil or less oil by. So just like I showed you in the video, the faster this thing moves, the more the washers start, basically it's the velocity of the oil going through those holes, and then everything starts to work.
Yes.
So the shim stack, the best way I can describe it is that it's like a leaf spring. You know how you got each one, and the ones toward the middle are the stiff ones, and then the ones way out here are the soft ones. So as you start to compress, it's doing the big one first, and it's the exact same way on the shim stack washers.
Shim stack.
Yep.
Terry Mode wants to go back to the sway bar shock swaying question. So if you do set up a set of shocks correctly, you don't need sway bars.
Correct. That's how I run mine.
Yes.
So guys and gals, this just depends on how much time you want to spend monkeying around with your setup. If you're like me, I live, eat, and breathe this stuff. Right. I'm all about it. And the more I do it, I've been working with King and Fox for 15 years. I pick up something from these guys every time, and I'm able to better dial in my stuff. And by the way, once you start, like this is a regular coilover shock, right? Once you start getting into internal bypass or those kinds of shocks, there's all, like every month they got something new. They're like, oh, we changed the angle of the hole and the blah, 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 and pop-off valves. And even on something like this, if you get the one that has the clicker, that's got what they call a spike control valve. And that also acts kind of like an air bump, where for a second it closes down because you've jolted the system. Fox's version of that is their DSC, and that's a high and low speed compression adjustment, which is really cool. So that's what helps, like we saw in the video, where when you're first going slow and you're just kind of like blowing through stuff, and then when you start to go fast, you're going, on Fox, you can adjust both. So that's kind of cool. That's a little bit unique to them. That's why they patented it. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you touched base on bumps, internal bumps, shocks with internal bumps, so IBPs.
IBPs.
You want to talk
so,
about how
so
they're
the
a little
idea
bit
there
different?
is that there's typically there's a needle or something inside that as the piston comes up, so the piston's right about here right now. So as that slides up and it gets near this, it starts to progressively, and I mean really progressive, slow this thing down. So a lot of the time you could run that in conjunction with a bump stop. So where I told you there's a 700 pound spring rate, now you got like a 1,400 pound spring rate, slowing everything down. Where that's really good is coming off a jump, hitting something that you really didn't expect, or if you're just gonna go extremely fast through something, that'll help do that. Now, I gotta caution you, okay? You can't just put some of these shocks on and be Robbie Gordon.
No.
You will break the rest of your vehicle apart, okay? Back when we first started, The first year I raced King of the Hammers, we had 2-inch coilovers like this on here. And the next year when we went with 3-inch, and then the next year after that we went with 4-inch, we were breaking more and more stuff because you're able to go faster.
Yes.
So just be aware. If you're putting them on to go faster, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that has to happen. If you're putting them on for more dampening control, for a better positive feel, more predictable, then you're doing the right thing. Okay, that's going to completely satisfy your needs, and you will not be disappointed.
All right, so Peter Pillman has a question. What's the wait time on coilovers right now? Because he's just now starting his 4-link in the rear, 3-link in the front on a YJ. It's got a turbo 350 with a 203 doubler, 205 doubler.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's got a little bit more weight in it, but
Yeah.
he needs to know what we're looking at per shock wait times.
Yeah, so it depends on the size shock you want, okay? And it depends on what brand you want. I know Fox is out pretty far. Now the difference is that we buy in bulk from these companies. So we made our purchase commitments like a year ago. So we still have shocks coming on a regular delivery, but I gotta warn you, everybody is delayed. Even they're just having trouble getting things powder coated or plated or the shim stack or what, just the basic components, the Hymens. So even though King may have all their parts done or Fox may have, they're waiting on other component suppliers to deliver to them. It's a real problem throughout the industry.
Yes.
Whether it's raw material for us to make a skid plate or aluminum to make a control arm.
Bearings to make an axle.
Bearings, yeah, but all that stuff. We were just down at Curry and that's what they were telling us, that they can't even get the bearings. So my advice would be this. We've just gotten notices from all of our suppliers, and I know this is across the industry, that prices are going up. In addition to that, lead times are going up.
Yes.
So if these are parts that you know you're going to want and you can afford to order them now, order them, okay? Because you're going to be able to get your order in before prices go up, and you'll get your place in line. The folks that call us and go, is this in stock? Is this in stock? I'll be honest, we're processing a couple hundred orders a day, and the inventory is radically changing in the warehouse. Now, we've got a lot of guys out there building parts, so we're making more every day too, but that inventory, man, it's all over the place. So if you need them, order them before you need them.
Yep.
Be safe, and like we're talking about, some of this will go right on, you're gonna be set, if you gave us all the right information, or you may have to do a little bit of tweaking to it. When you call here to talk to me or one of my guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions about your vehicle. Are you running hard doors? Are you running a hard top? Do you carry a bunch of stuff? Are you running a spare tire carrier off the back? Are you, stacking stuff on top of that? Do you run one of those tents? Like if you've got a bunch of stuff, we got to change these spring rates radically, okay? So the more information you can give us, the more you know about your vehicle, the better. Now, that said, if you've listened to anything I've said on my previous Tech Talks, the lighter you can have your vehicle, the better. Okay? So, in some cases, you just need to turn into a backpacker if you're going to go camping and carry super lightweight stuff. That's what Alex and I do when we go out. Yep. He sleeps in one of those hammock things. We call it a bear burrito.
That's awesome. All right, Jason Hanley's got a question, so is Michael Rorick. Let's get to Jason's first. How do you determine which length of shock you should get? 12-inch, 14-inch? Yes.
Okay, that's a great question. So the most common thing is that everybody wants the longest shock they can get. Well, let me tell you this. A 14-inch travel shock will max out every one of your components. It's going to max out your steering. It's going to max out your drive shafts. This is all you need. It's all you should have. Now, the decision to go shorter than that would be that I want my vehicle to sit a little lower, or I've got things in my fender well, like there's something about the mounting that I can't get it higher up inside there, and that would limit the length of the shock for how high I want my vehicle to sit.
Yep.
So those are the factors, right? If you don't listen to me and you put on a 16-inch travel shock, you're going to end up limiting that out, and it would have been a waste of money, and you would have had to make these crazy shock mounts that look ridiculous because they're sticking up through the hood or whatever else. So you're just kind of throwing your money away.
Well, and how do they, so along those lines, how would they figure out which angle to place that shock at?
That's a whole nother deal. And I don't know if we had a slide for that. No, we didn't. Okay. But when you change the angle of the shock, it changes all these factors. Okay. When you move the shock off the axle, that changes all of these rates. Okay. So what we're talking about today is mounting these, on the axle or very close to the axle, because that's also going to give you the best spring and dampening control, right? What you're after is a vehicle that feels very positive and predictable. There's nothing worse than when you're trying to go up something and you feel the thing just floating around. You go, man, I can't even tell if the tires are on the ground. You want that thing planted, okay? So that you have confidence to drive forward and know that thing's not gonna put you on your lid. The worst thing you can do is have that quick weight transfer, and next thing you know, you're on your side or on the lid. So that's a big part of what we build into this. And if you get one of our kits, it explains all this. Or if you're getting like a Tracer and Elite, it's all figured out. There's not even any options. You just put everything where we say, and that's it. You don't have to even think about it.
Yeah, and Tony's gonna hate me for suggesting this, but I used to hang out on pirate4x4.com. They've got a 4-link calculator over there that'll help you determine what angle those shocks need to be at if you're gonna turn your Jeep into a buggy. I used it when I created the Valtastrophe back in the day, so I mean, it's still there. Go over and use it. Math is awesome.
Yeah. What we've done, all of the parts and components that we offer, so whether it's shock mounts or shocks, are all designed to be mounted under the body of a Jeep. Okay, so obviously we sell tabs and all kinds of stuff. So, if you want to cut the thing off and tube out the back, whatever, you can do that. But you're venturing down a long path of having to dial this in yourself. Just understand that, okay? Everything we've done is I've gone through the trouble to work with these companies to figure out the right valving for these springs on a Jeep, okay? That's the big difference. We've even done more on this stuff than the people at these companies, because this is all we do is Jeeps. So they do buggies and trucks and all kinds of stuff. So
race cars, everything. So we work with both Fox and King. Which one do you prefer?
It depends. So today would be availability, right? Like I think we actually have some Kings in stock. But here's the difference. King is going to have a high polished, hard chrome shaft. Fox is going to have a stainless steel polished shaft, okay? So if you live in a corrosive environment where they're spraying that crap on the road to melt the snow or ice, the steel shaft is going to take a beating on that, where the stainless will be a good choice for you. What I was talking about before, if you get the compression adjustment, and by the way, I highly recommend that you buy remote reservoir with compression adjustment. It's only $100 per shock when you buy the shock. If you have to send it back and do it, it's like $500, okay? But it's only $100 when you buy the shock. Get it, because whether it's the Fox or the King, having that compression adjustment means that if your vehicle is completely empty, each click is worth 1%. There's 25 clicks. You get 25% adjustment. Okay, in compression only. Okay, doesn't affect rebound. Your rebound is going to be really dictated by how much preload you have and where these secondary nuts are. Okay, and don't worry, your shocks are going to get those wheels out. You saw the video I showed you. They're going to keep that tire in contact with the ground. And what we're mostly concerned with as Jeep guys is just as you drop off something that you're not bang, because not only is it the suspension, it's usually the rear bumper or the undercarriage or something else is hitting it all together. So that's what we're after, is that nice dampening control.
Yes. There are other companies out there that also make shocks. We've got Swayway. I run all Swayways. Bilstein.
Yep. Bradflow. ADS, you said.
ADS has got coilovers. So if you guys are looking to buy stuff right now, get a hold of our guys or call the companies directly. But it's probably going to be easier if you get a hold of Perkins or Keith or Andrew. to make the pass through, and we'll get you some shocks.
Yeah. Once, if you choose to go with one of the other brands that we don't sell, it's harder or nearly impossible for us to tech it.
Right.
So if you're calling in for tech help, you might have to work with those companies a little more. And I can tell you, one of the reasons we deal with King and Fox is they are out there. These are the guys that are in the field helping us tune this stuff.
Yes.
And they're really on top of it.
Yes.
So it's the support.
And
That's
if you
why we
guys
do it.
really want to get into some technical aspects when go out and shock tune with somebody other than King and Fox, we've got Wayne over at Alltech.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
He's great.
He's
and he'll meet you
fantastic.
right out at the hammers.
Yep.
So you're not tuning in some desert section that, you know, doesn't matter to a Jeep.
No. And if you're in the middle of the country, there's 303 Shocks that's available in Denver. We've got Down South Motorsports, and I believe they're down south. You're welcome for that one, guys.
Yeah.
And then if you want to tackle building, like taking this whole thing apart and building the internals and guts and everything yourself, you want to tell them how the general gist of it.
Sure.
Like, you don't want to do it laying down like this because you're going to make a mess.
Typically what they do is they put it in a vise. The first thing you got to do is you've got to take the compression off the springs, right?
Yes.
Then you're gonna stand it up and you're gonna pull down on this and get this cup off.
Maybe.
Okay? So once the cup's off, the springs come off quite easily. Okay? So this is how you would change springs, right? Then you take out that slider that I was telling you about, and then you can take off the other spring. So even when you go to shock tune or you send your shocks in, you'd always send them without the springs. So then what they do is they clamp it, and then they've got special tools that don't jack up the anodizing that start unscrewing this. Now remember, I told you this is full of oil. So immediately when you take this off, its oil is right to the top. That's how it works, because you can't allow any air like I told you before. So this one may or may not, no, this has no nitrogen in it. So you can see how hard it is to push down, and there's a lot of compression dampening there, and that's what I'm talking about is, that really helps your vehicle.
Yes.
When you compare that to a regular shock that you bolt on, this is like phenomenal. So.
Speaking of Perkins, he's got a question.
Okay.
Tony, how fast the Blue Banshee now goes.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know Jeff, he's got a TJ that he just dropped a 5.3 into, V8. Do you recommend bumping the shocks up to a 2.5 or leaving them at a 2.0?
Well, that's a good question. So obviously the 2.5, as you can imagine, just has more oil in it. Now, I know you think, well, that's only 0.5 bigger in diameter, but it's actually like 60% more volume. So same when you go from 2.5 to 3.0, it's a big difference, okay? Yes. So yeah, Jeff would see a difference. Now, there is a point of no return, right? So what happens sometimes is you add so much shock, and we have this happen on the race cars all the time, so that we can keep it from bottoming out, but now we can't rebound it fast enough, right? The fluid can't go back out and keep that wheel on the ground. This is a problem as soon as you start to go fast, right? Because now you're having to absorb a lot of energy, but then keep that tire. And that's a fine line, because if you let the tire or the shock come back out fast, it could also buck you. Okay, so I think that's part of what Jeff's getting right now.
Yes.
He's getting a little bit of bucking. So that's a combination of things, right? So some of it's tire pressure. I don't know what tire pressure he was running when that occurred. So we'd need to check that. I'd also need to look at his spring rates, and I need to look at where these secondary nuts are, okay, to figure out when that's kicking in. Because we might need to have those kick in later. But if he's hitting the bump, and that's where the buck's coming from, then we got the wrong springs in there. So that's how you tell where everything's at, right?
Yep.
So hitting the bump. Once you're hitting the bump, it's wrong. You need to like stop and refigure stuff. Now remember, we can fake out his compression by adding another 50 pounds of nitrogen. So we can do that quickly and run it and see if that helps the bucking, or if it's truly a rebound thing and he just doesn't have enough rebound damage.
Exactly.
Yep.
The guys are loving that you're on fire about all things shocks right now.
Man.
It's awesome.
Like, and I honestly, compared to like one of the tuners, you know, at King or Fox, I probably know 25% of what they do. Maybe 50%, maybe. But what I know is how it feels, right? I'm the guy in the seat, and when I come back around, I got to be able to tell them, here's what it's doing.
Yes.
And you know, once you get past the bottoming thing, then there's a whole bunch of other fine tuning that you can do to get the vehicle to handle exactly what you want. That's why the Terremoto, I don't have any sway bars, because I've got the spring rates, the secondary nuts, everything's totally dialed in where I know it'll set into a corner, I can slide, it's not gonna lean over or do anything funny. You can get your vehicle there.
Yeah.
So you just, it takes a little bit of time.
It does.
Unless you literally go, I'm gonna build exactly like Terremoto. I want the same valving, same spring, same everything, but you have to do everything exactly the same. Yeah. You start changing outside of that, I can't help you.
Yep. So now that we've got the slider out, we've got this one.
Yeah.
Each one of them goes a different direction, including the Fox one.
Yes. Yeah, but they have a tall side and a short side. So this one has a tall side on the bottom.
That's King.
The reason it does is what they're worried about, if I can pull this back out. As you can see, there's good. Okay, so what happens is they're worried about the thing coming off and getting caught down here, and then it'll break. Okay, so they want the thing to stay on the shaft and then be able to hit this secondary nut, right? That's what kicks in. It just locks out this spring, and the second spring's in play.
Yep.
So the AGM, they know that it's for a higher performance vehicle, and that's going to put the longer part on the top. Now this is for a 2.5, but you'll get the idea, is this slider can come down a lot further before it falls off. So that's what they're after. They know you're running fast, long travel, and that's how that's going to work.
Yes, and don't get those backwards.
No.
Because you will bend stuff. Just
it won't last long.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
All right, so getting into some more questions. In here, we have a gentleman that's got a double throwdown Evo kit on his JK, and he wants to know if any of this applies to his. For those of you that don't know what a double throwdown kit is, it's an old race style of suspension. It's cantilever suspension. They used to use on Class 8 trucks, used to.
Yeah.
They don't use it anymore.
Yeah, and what happens is there's a lot of linkage, right?
Yeah.
So all of that linkage, especially as it gets older and more dirty, it doesn't move as smooth. And that provides artificial. So that's part of the reason I was telling you that when this is here and you've got direct spring and shock in line, it's the most efficient, it's the most direct, right? You've got all the control. As soon as you start leveraging things off, you're taking that away.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing about that. Now, you're still gonna go back to, is it bottoming, right?
Yes.
The first thing you gotta solve is bottoming, because that means you've got the wrong springs. You don't even have the right springs to like properly hold the vehicle up. You're just blowing through the travel.
Yep.
Okay, so you gotta fix that first before you can do everything else. I'll tell you a story. After I met Brett King, I went with him out to one of the Pro 2, Pro 4 Lucas races where the trucks were jumping. And when they come off the jump, they would just stick. Yeah. And that's what I grabbed him and I go, that's exactly what I want my Jeep to do. You know, I just want that thing to stick. And he's like, oh, well, that's blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh my God, you know, like I just had to keep talking to him until I could like demonstrate, okay, that's what I want. And then he goes, oh, sure, yeah, well, we just got to do this, that, and the other thing. So, and a lot of it has to do with springs, believe it or not.
It does a lot to do with springs.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we had another question. Bear with me, guys, because I'm going to skip over your question,
I'll see what else I need to talk about.
Let's see. I think we're all caught up.
Are we really?
We got Jason's question. We got 5 minutes left. Let me know if you guys have, okay. We have a new gentleman joining us, Tim Cahill. Welcome from Iowa.
Nice.
He looked up the meaning for Terremoto. Jeff Perkins, if you're on, he wants to know what is up with the Blue Banshee. The Growler, you want to explain why the Growler's named the Growler YJ?
Oh man, a long time ago, I put a really built LS1 in it, and it had that nice growl to it.
Yes, it did.
And that's how we ended up calling it the growl.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Tommy Dykstra wants you to explain cavitation in shocks. And we kind of touched base on this with Ernie here on Tuesday.
Yeah. So a lot of that has to do with air, right? Or what some people describe as shock fade. And you want to be careful about that. That's where the nitrogen pressure on top of the oil, so that's what it's doing, is it's compressing the oil to make sure that it can't foam or cavitate. But typically, if it is, the shock needs to be serviced, right? You're getting to a point where if it's really not doing its job, you need to pull that, change the oil, rebleed it, and get that thing. And that's, what we were talking about, where you got it in the vise. You'd fill this thing with oil, and then you'd carefully set this cap back in until the oil ran out, and tighten this down. And typically they wipe it up with a rag, and then you've got all oil in there. It's really no different than a radio control car shock. It's exactly like you do those exact same way. So.
Excellent. The guys are definitely requesting another show on shocks. Yes. Okay. So we could do a deep dive. Maybe we could get Mike Kim
and we've got over on YouTube. I've got more programs on shocks over there. We've done a terminology show on it. There's a ton of stuff that we've already done. I'm always happy to talk about it. You're talking about one of my favorite subjects, so no problem there. The next slide we had, Val, was you had a couple of places where they could get parts and even send shocks in for service that were smaller outfits. I know Alltech is one of them.
Alltech is one of them, alltech.com. And then another out of Denver's 303 Shocks. That's one of the Flahart brothers that totally builds great everything. I've never had any issues with anything I've sent to those guys. And then Brian Hartman, that is in Hurricane somewhere. I'll have to post up his phone number for you guys, because I don't think he actually has a website. But he does a lot of stuff with Carbon Off-Road and the race school that they have as well. And then we've got shockseals.com. If you guys want to tackle rebuilding your own shocks, need tools for your shocks, any of that, head over to shockseals.com. You guys could use GenRight 10, all one thing, all one word, as a coupon code until the 26th. Chris hooked us up with that over at shockseals.com. Nice. When you do pull apart your shocks, just know that you need to have them in that vise. Put a rag around them.
It's going to make a mess.
Yeah, it's going to make a mess. Yeah. Put it in the vise with a rag around it, have some rags available, and just know that you're going to have oil everywhere.
And don't be shocked if it's dirty. It's just the way it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
And you could get shock oil from Torco.
Yep.
If you guys are looking for shock oil locally, head down to a motorcycle shop. They usually have it. It's the same stuff.
Yeah. And it does come in different weights, and there's different properties associated with that. So one of the things that I do want to talk about is if you're struggling with this for years now, you may or may not know this, but I always go to events a day early to just help our customers dial in their shocks.
Yes.
Very few people take me up on that, by the way. I bring a lift, I bring the nitrogen, I bring everything to help people. So, if you want to do that, you got to let us know. Otherwise, I also offer an in-person one-on-one driver training school.
Yes.
So if you have any aspirations of racing, or you just want to be a better wheeler,
it's on the
that's
website.
available. That's on the website too.
We can actually go back to that tab. And then next week is our revamped GenRight 4x4 nights all across the country, guys.
All across the country.
We're going to be doing them Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in various locations. We've got one here in Simi Valley over at the Rock and Roll Cafe, and you are headed out to Venture Off-Road.
That's right, in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona.
Scottsdale, Arizona.
If you're out that way,
He should be, Deborah Carnell asked what time you're going to be there, probably around 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I think it is 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here we are back to the website, and there's the racing.
Yep. So. And then the race school.
And you can just type in school, and it'll come right up too. We sell it on a video series, or you can just call us and get booked.
And
with the
Tommy's
direct
on. He's gone through that whole
He has.
series and gone through the race school one-on-one with Tony. And
It's super fun.
yes.
Super fun.
Yep. Are you guys showing up a day early for Unlimited LJ Adventure? Jeremy Duper wants to know.
That's like light years away. I don't know yet.
Ask us in a couple months, Jeremy. We'll let you know.
I can't even, like, people are asking me what day I'm showing up for Easter Jeep Safari. I'm having trouble nailing that down.
Maddie, I'm ignoring your question.
We are going to Easter Jeep, by the way.
Yes, we are.
We almost forgot about that.
So we'll be heading out to Easter Jeep Safari. Our goal is to get as much content with our creators.
We're bringing the brand new Aftershock JL.
JL. It's a JL, not a tracer. It is an elite extreme suspension.
That's right.
And it's funny because some of our viewers asked earlier on a different spot on Facebook, what would you put underneath the new Bronco? And I'm like, the EXS chassis, of course.
Yeah.
That thing's getting really close. Darren's got the skid plates on, guys, and he's got the exhaust on. The engine's already in. The new steering, because for those of you that don't have a JL, it doesn't actually have a steering box. Scary to me. So they're putting mechanical steering in on it, and it's going to be the PSC system.
Yep.
So
very excited about that.
lots of cool stuff.
I just took some new pictures. I'll get those posted in the gallery. Get that updated tonight or tomorrow. So
yes, and if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, it's going to go out this weekend. So make sure you jump on the website, go to the very bottom. Sign up for it.
Yep.
It's full of all kinds of cool stuff. Everything from, trail. We're going to talk about a couple of trails we'll be doing at Easter Jeep Safari. We're also going to give you a couple of recipes to cook out at camp.
Sure.
All kinds of stuff. Tech tips and events, and of course, one of you keeps tagging us in all of your posts, so we're going to feature your vehicle in the newsletter.
There you go.
I am not telling you who, so make sure you start tagging us so I can see it. And
show off your vehicle. If it's loaded with GenRight, we want to see it for sure.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to have to do another follow-up in this.
So, okay, Easter Jeep Safari. Do you want to talk about Thursday?
No.
No, not yet. Okay.
All right, so Friday night at Easter Jeep Safari, we will be at Dixie 4-wheel Drive
it's Friday night.
at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Yes, so it's after the Ultra 4 race, 6 p.m. at Dixie 4-wheel Drive. We're barbecuing. Come down and check out the EXS suspension. Tony's going to have...
And the Growler's going to be there.
Yes, we haven't even announced that. Jamie's going to have the Growler there, right, Jamie? He's got his head down behind us, guys.
He's close.
He's very
Gas
close.
and plug wires is what he's down to.
Yep, it's very, very close. So, yeah, we're excited about that. Lots of stuff going on at EJS. And we're going out to wheel, guys.
Yep.
We don't have, we do have a set plan, but we're just going to go wheel.
Yeah, we don't have any structured trail runs or anything. So hopefully we see you out there. Usually toward the end of the day, I try to get over to Potato Salad Hill. Kind of watch what's going on over there.
If you guys don't know, I have rolled down that, so don't be like Val. It's not fun.
I know the last time we were there, we had to strap somebody. Somebody else almost.
It was Holly.
Went. Oh, it was Holly.
Yeah. So, and I think this year is actually my 16-year anniversary of rolling off that cliff. Man. So, yeah, it's been a while.
Time ago.
Yes, it is.
That's why they call it potato.
Why it's called the Valtastrophe, because it was such a catastrophe after I rolled it. It's now the Valtastrophe.
Everybody I've seen roll down that, it's ugly.
It is.
And it's what I refer to as tossing your salad.
Yes.
Yes.
That's, potato salad. All right. Alien Fab 4x4. Dan wants to know which vehicle you're taking to Scottsdale next week, because you're going wheeling.
The Terremoto.
Yes.
You bet. My favorite go-to for sure.
Yes.
So Terremoto for the next couple weeks, and then after that it'll be the JL for quite a while. So
we're excited.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah,
well,
I
next
think that's
week's
it.
show.
Next week's show we are talking about.
I can't read your scribbles. Wow.
Oh, we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about 3 and 4 link suspensions, radius arms, single triangulated, double triangulated, and then we're going to touch on how to plan for an out-of-state trip with Easter Jeep Safari coming.
Yes.
Kind of what to do. You want to service those bearings. You got a couple things you want to do on a trailer. or if you're flat towing, I can give you a few tips.
Yes.
So
don't be like that guy that was flat towing the other day, a diesel truck.
Yeah.
With a 6-inch lift.
Yeah,
Please don't ever do that. Please
No.
don't.
So Tuesday, that'll be the Tech Talk. Thursday, I'll be coming to you from the Phoenix Scottsdale area, live out there. So we got a lot of stuff going on, and then after that's going to be, you know, Hammers or Easter Jeep, Moab somewhere. I mean, we
Memorial
got
Day weekend, we've got all kinds of
tons
stuff
of
coming
stuff,
up.
yeah.
And do we want to hint about what's coming up in June for Grand Mesa Jeep Club?
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so guys, if you want to come wheel with us, Grand Mesa Jeep Club, Rock Junction, the first week of June in
So
Grand
this is
Junction.
in Grand Junction, Colorado. So halfway across the country.
Yep.
Right? No excuses. You can't make it there.
Yep. Go over to Grand Mesa Jeep Club's website, gjmc.org. Wow, that was hard.
And I've gone to this a bunch of years. So if you follow me on Facebook, I've got tons of albums of pictures from these events. I always meet Val there. We have a great time. You get to wheel in Moab. You get to wheel in Montrose, Rangeley,
Grand Junction.
World
famous 21 Road.
21 Road, or the other one.
Out at Billings Canyon.
Billings.
Yep,
Yes,
Billings
I
Canyon.
love Billings.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, a lot of good stuff, and so lots of opportunities to get together with us and wheel a little bit. So.
Yep. So you guys now know that's where we'll be the first week of June. So you're more than welcome to join us. Just go sign up for those trails at Grand Mesa Jeep Club's Rock Junction.
All right, that's all we got for tonight. So thank you all for joining us. Our special guest, Val.
I'm
It's
outta
nice
here.
to have her here. And we'll see you on Tuesday.